Good morning. Welcome to Arlington First Baptist Church Sunday School lesson. It's Sunday, June the 28th, and my name is Brad Brown, and I will be bringing you the Sunday School lesson this morning. I will be using the Explore Sunday School material. So we are on lesson 4 of this material, and it comes out of the book of Proverbs, chapter 4. So that's where we'll be studying a few minutes this morning. So hope you're having a good morning, and hope things are going well for you. Of course, the book of Proverbs was written, inspired by God, obviously, but written by Solomon. And of course, Solomon was the wisest man on earth. God granted him the wisdom, which is what he asked for. And God granted him wisdom, and he is the wisest man that has ever lived besides Jesus Christ. And so he had a lot of wise things, and so the book of Proverbs has a lot of wise sayings and a lot of teachings for us. So in chapter 4, he talks about obtaining wisdom and actually acquiring wisdom and using the wisdom that is required. And it kind of takes you down. He gives you choices. And I got to thinking, we make choices. Life was full of choices. We make many choices each day. It is estimated that we make 35,000 choices a day. That's a lot. It's a lot of choices we make. That's an average of a choice every 2 seconds. And so we make a lot of choices. Of course, the majority of those choices don't have minor impacts. Some we do for our day-to-day living. Like this morning, you've made a choice on, okay, do I hit the snooze button another time, or do I get up out of bed? You've probably made a choice of, okay, what am I going to have for breakfast this morning, or am I going to eat breakfast? Am I going to drink coffee? Am I going to drink juice, milk, whatever the case may be. You've probably, if you are going to in-person church this morning, you're probably trying to find out what am I going to wear. What shoes am I going to wear with this? How am I going to dress? And so we make a lot of choices each day. When we get up and go to work, we have to make several choices. Which I know sometimes I go 2 different directions when I travel to work. I get up in the morning and sometimes I'll take the parkway and go to work. Sometimes I'll go through town. So we make a lot of choices, and like I said, the majority of our choices we make have very little impact on our life. But some choices we do make have a major impact. There are some major choices we make in our lives that have a tremendous impact on the direction we go, on the life that we lead. Some of those choices are I know some of the major choices that I've made in life. What am I going to do with my life after high school? Do I go to college? Do I work? What do I do? I made the choice to go to college. I think that choice has had a major impact in my life. It's pretty much just kind of driven what I've done in my life, the direction I've headed in my life. So that was a major choice in my life. Another major choice is who am I going to marry? That is a major choice. Am I going to get married? So those are big choices that basically influence the rest of your life. Having kids. Do I not have kids? Some major choices that we make. Where am I going to live? Where am I going to locate? Where my kids are going to go to school? Where am I going to raise my kids? Those are big choices that we make. And, and I think, God basically gives us the ability to have wisdom when we make those choices if we ask him and if we seek that out. And that's basically what Solomon is telling his son here in chapter 4. He's saying, listen, hey, there's some big choices that you're going to have to make in life, and then there's 2 main choices that's going to affect not only life here, but life throughout eternity. And that is, do I follow God and his direction in my life, or do I reject him and I follow the plan of evil? And so Solomon was telling his son, hey, these are two major choices. I've taught a lot of Bible school lessons and some kids and even some youth, and I've told them, I said, the biggest choice you'll ever make, you're gonna make a lot of big choices in life. Who you're gonna date, who you're gonna take to prom, what college you're gonna go to, are you gonna marry someone? Those are major choices that will affect your life here on this earth. But the biggest choice you'll ever make in life is accepting Jesus as your Savior. And that's not only going to affect your life here, but throughout eternity. I said that's the biggest decision you'll ever make in your life, biggest choice you'll ever make. And I think that's what Solomon's trying to get to here in chapter 4. Do I follow God's plan or do I reject it? So let's read in chapter 4. I know Brother Matthew, actually he did his sermon last Sunday, in the first few verses of chapter 4, but I'm going to read all of chapter 4, and then we'll go back and kind of discuss a few of them, mainly starting with verse 11 and the remainder of the chapter. But it says, "My children, listen. When your father corrects you, pay attention and learn good judgment, for I'm giving you good guidance. Don't turn away from my instructions, for I too was once my father's son, tenderly loved as my mother's only child. My father taught me, take my words to heart, follow my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom, develop good judgment. Don't forget my words or turn away from them. Don't turn your back on wisdom, for she will protect you. Love her, and she will guard you. Getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And whatever else you do, develop good judgment. If you prize wisdom, she will make you great. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will place a lovely wreath on your head. She will present you with a beautiful crown. My child, listen to me and do as I say, and you will have a long, good life. I will teach you wisdom's ways and lead you in straight paths. When you walk, you won't be held back. When you run, you won't stumble. Take hold of my instructions and don't let them go. Guard them, for they are the keys to life. Don't do as the wicked do, and don't follow the path of evildoers. Don't even think about it. Don't go that way. Turn away and keep moving, for evil people can't sleep until they've done their evil deed for the day. They can't rest until they've caused someone to stumble. They eat the food of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. The way of the righteous is like the first gleam of dawn, which shines ever brighter until the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like the total darkness. They have no idea what they are stumbling over. My child, pay attention to what I say. Listen carefully to my words. Don't lose sight of them. Let them penetrate deep into your heart, for they bring life to those who find them and healing to their whole body. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet and stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil." And so that's all of chapter 4 there. And Solomon, several times he tells, listen to me. Listen to what I have to say. And, we do that with our kids a lot. I tell my kids a lot of times, hey, listen. Hey, what I'm about to tell you is important. And I remember my parents telling me that. And back then, I was probably half-heartedly listening. But as I've gotten older, I've remembered some of the things they've taught me and some of the things that they've said, hey, listen, this is important. And so I've tried to, do that to my son. I think it's as you get older, you want the best for your children. And so, and that's Solomon here. He's telling us several times, he says, listen what I have to say. This is important. And he's telling them, that you've got basically two paths here. He's telling them, he says, life is a journey. Life it is a journey. And, you're going to either follow God's direction and what he has for you, or you're going to go the path of the world, the evil path. And he's telling them, hey, listen, I've done this. I've experienced this. And, Solomon, if you look back, Solomon was the wisest man on earth. God granted him that. And if you looked, read much or studied much of the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon, being the wisest man on earth, he pretty much tells them, the things of this world is basically useless. He calls it, it's meaningless. Everything is meaningless to the world. And he was, at one time, he was the richest man on earth. He was the wisest man on earth. He didn't withhold his self-pleasure. He had over, I think, like 1,000 wives or something. I mean, it's, and so basically, if it was something to be done out there, he had done it. He probably could have been the one that said, been there, done that, got the T-shirts. He tried it all, and he told that. Basically, in Ecclesiastes, he says, "I've done it all." He said, "I've worked." He said, "I've worked long hours and built great wealth and done great things. Done great things." Basically, it's meaningless. He says, "I've tried this. I've had all these women. I've had all these concubines," which was common back in those days. And he said, "I've tried that. It's meaningless." And he said, even the wisdom I have, the wealth of knowledge that I have, he says it's all meaningless, compared to what God has in store for us. And so he's telling his son, hey, listen, hey, gaining wisdom, following God's direction, following your purpose in life is making that choice is going to have a major impact on your life. And so he says there's two paths. Life's a journey. Which path are you going to take? Which one are you going to go down? He said the evil people, they get hindered up by pride, power, pleasure, greed. He said all these things are what, and they can even stumble up a believer. They can even get into a believer's heart and make them trip up. And I thought of what it said good here in the book. It says godly instruction will prevent us from being tripped up by the circumstances of life. And sometimes the circumstances of life trip us up as Christians, and we can kind of start going down the wrong path. And it's a daily process. It's something that you have to work on daily. If not, you can easily get tripped up. I kind of like what he said also in verse 13. It says, hold on to the instructions, don't let go, guard it, for it is your life. I kind of think, basically the instructions of life that we have is the Bible. Is your Bible dusty? Is it sitting over on the shelf? Or are you using it? You're using it daily. I fail to use it like I should, and I think we all do. I think we all wish we had read our Bible more. I know I do, because it has great wisdom and great guidance for our life. And that's what Solomon's telling them. Hey, hold on to this, guard it. It's the keys to life. God's commandments and what he has for you, his instruction, his wisdom, it's the keys to life. And he said, hold on to it, guard it. And of course, as you go down, starting in verse 14, 15, he talks about the path that you should avoid. Avoid these evil paths. Don't go down this road. It says, the things that's going on evil, it's in darkness. It's not going to be good for you. Not only is it going to affect your life here, it's going to affect your life for eternity. And so he says, avoid it. Stay away from it. And I kind of like what it said in the Bible here in the book. It says, in fact, going down this evil road, he said, it might even look fun. He said, that's when we start telling ourselves that we might enjoy taking a few steps down that road. He says, we might be deceived into believing we can only take a few steps, then exit the path whenever we want. I think that's a lot of times how a lot of us Christians get down the wrong path, is because, we'll just like, man, that's okay. We can do this. We can take a few steps down this road. We can get involved in this just a little bit. And then next thing you know, before you know it, you're way down the road. It's like the old saying, I've heard it many a times. It says, sin will take you farther than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you'll ever want to pay. And man, that's so true. I've looked back over my life, and sometimes, little things that you think's not a big deal at all, and the next thing you know, it's a big deal. And so, and I think that's what Solomon's telling here. Hey, don't go down that road. It's gonna be, you're gonna regret it. It's gonna cost you more than you'll ever want to pay. It's gonna take you down a road that you'll never want to go down. And as he keeps going on, he basically says, Solomon tells him, he says, hey, when you go down this road, it leads to darkness. And and you're going to get so far down that road, you don't even know why you went down this road. You don't even know how you got down this road so far. And that's what he says over here in verse 19. It says, but the way of the wicked is total darkness. They have no idea what they are stumbling over. They're so far down that road, they don't have no idea how they got there. And that's what sin will do to you. It'll get you so far down, one day you'll wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, where am I at? What's going on with my life? And sadly, so many people get that far down that road. They'll wake up sometimes and one day and they'll realize, they're out of a job. They've lost their family. They've lost their, anything they've had here on this earth. They've lost everything basically due to the sin in their life. And, they'll wake up one day and like, man, how did I get here? And that's what sin will do to you. It'll make you go to the bottom. It'll make you be in total darkness. There in verse 20, he starts Solomon starts telling him, he says, my son, pay attention to my words. Listen closely to my sayings. Don't lose sight of them. Keep them within your heart. For they are life to those who find them and health to one's whole body. Guard your heart above all else, for it is the source of life. And of course, I love those verses. He's saying, pay attention. Guard your heart because it's the source of life. It says, I like what they had here in the book. It says, godly wisdom calls on believers to guard their hearts above all else. Our hearts serve as the physical, emotional, and spiritual source of our lives. What we put in our hearts will make a difference in how we will live. Therefore, we're wise when we discipline ourselves to watch over our hearts. We guard our hearts by being wise about what we allow to be placed there. If we let our hearts be filled with senseless thoughts, we'll pay a price in senseless actions. But if we allow God's wisdom to be stored in our hearts, we'll reap the reward of a life lived wisely. And that pretty much sums it up. If you go down that road and have senseless thoughts and thinking about that stuff, it's going to lead to senseless actions, and it's going to lead to stuff that you don't want, that you're probably going to regret. But if we fill our hearts and think about the things that of God, then we'll reap a reward of life that is lived wisely. And and I think all throughout the Bible it talks about what we fix our thoughts on, what we think about, what we pursue in life. And if you're pursuing godly instruction in the Bible, it's going to pay off. And it says, as he goes on, like he said, guard your hearts, for it is the source of life. And the things we put in our heart, the things we put into us, and things we think about all the time is going to show out, whether it's evil or whether it's good. And as Solomon went on, he says, carefully consider the path for your feet, and all your ways will be established. Don't turn to the right or to the left. Keep your feet away from evil. And that's kind of how he finishes the chapter. And he tells them, hey, son, listen. He says, you basically got two paths here. Be careful which one you choose. And he realizes, Solomon realizes. He says, basically he's showing his son. He said, here's the path that you need to go down. I can't make you go down that path, but this is the path that you need to go down. And I remember a poem back, I guess, I don't know if it was high school, college, whatever, but I remember a poem that I read that basically, I'm not so sure wasn't written about this. It's by Robert Frost, and it's called The Road Less Traveled. Or The Road Not Taken, something like that. I probably should have looked it up. But anyway, basically what I remember, it says it's about a traveler, and he comes to a fork in the road. And he said there's two paths here. One that was fairly worn. You could tell that a lot of people had taken that road. And then he come to another one that was, the grass had basically grown up, and it was basically less traveled. The road that not have been taken. And that's the road he chose. And he basically, at the end, he says it made all the difference in the world. something like that. It's how I remember the poem. It had more to it, but basically, taking the road less traveled had made all the difference in his life. And I think that's what Solomon's trying to get his son here to listen. Hey, go down the path that God has for you. Don't chase after the stuff of this world. Don't chase after the stuff that is going to trip you up, stuff that is not of God, because that's all it's going to do. It's going to lead you down a path, and eventually you don't even know how you got down there. It's going to lead you down a path that you don't want to go. And that's what Solomon's saying. Here's your two paths. Here's your journey of life. You got good, you got, things of God, or you got the things of evil. Which one you're going to take. And talking about the past, over in Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Thought I had it marked, but I don't. If you bear with me a second. Jesus is talking here, teaching, and he says basically, you can enter God's kingdom only through the narrow gate. The highway to hell is broad, and its gate is wide for the many who choose that way. For there are many that choose that way. But the gateway to life is very narrow, and the road is difficult, and only a few ever find it. That kind of reminds me of that poem that I was telling you about. The road that's less traveled, few find that road. Few want to take that road because on the surface it may not look as fun. It may not look as the road that you want to go down, because we always want to be with the crowd, right? It's a lot easier to go with the flow than it is to stand out. And God asks us to be salt and light and to stand out. And and Solomon here, he's telling his son. He said, "Listen, here's these two paths. You've got a choice to make. Are you going to follow the things of God, or are you going to follow the things of evil?" And that's what he's telling us today. There's a lot of evil going on in this world, and so we have a choice. Are we gonna still stand up for the things of God, because it's getting harder and harder to stand up for godly things. It seems like it's being ridiculed and pushed back as much as possible. And the Bible tells us, that's the way it's going to be. If you're going to follow God, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy road. It's going to be the road less traveled. It's going to be the journey that nobody wanted to go down, because it's not as fun. It don't look as glamorous, but its reward in the end is great. And that's what Solomon's telling here. Hey, listen, I've tried all that stuff the world offers. It's meaningless. It's meaningless. Only the things of God is what's going to last and be truly fulfilling in your life. So that's about all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed. Read chapter 4. Proverbs. I've always liked Proverbs, and so Solomon always has some good stuff for us. So we'll pray. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you so much for this day, Lord. I just thank you so much for how you love us and how you take care of us, and just thank you so much for just Solomon and the gift of wisdom that you give him, and the ability he had to put it in words, dear Lord, and it being preserved for us today, dear Lord. And it is so relevant for us today as it was back then, dear Lord. And I just pray that each one person listening to this, that you just help us to choose the right path, choose the path that is of God, dear Lord, and things that are of you, dear Lord. And let us not be tripped up by the things of this world, dear Lord. And Lord, we just thank you so much for just how you take care of us and watch over us in so many ways. And thank you most of all for Jesus. And we ask all this in his name. Amen.